Hey, welcome everybody. So here we have the Joomla Framework API, and we'll be using this to create a REST API. It's quite a easy way to get all the information from, for instance, a database, and then output that information in JSON format, which we will then be using AngularJS to read that and create our front-end website. So credits go out to David Hurley. I followed one of his tutorials to actually learn about the Joomla Framework API, and also Ganesh, who has a YouTube video. So those URLs are linked below. Please check them out. It will also help you to understand how did I get to this current point to set up the API that I have. So here we have two folders. Our app, all of our code for our app will sit in this app folder. We also have the vendor folder. The reason for this vendor folder is we're using Composer to actually get all of our Joomla classes. So if you need any information on that, once again, look at Ganesh's video. He shows you how to install Composer. And then we have this index.php and our .htaccess file. Everything when interacting with this website goes through the index.php, and that's because this .htaccess file has all of the redirects, which is asking all URLs to actually go through the index.php. So let's look at our index.php file. So here we have our root folder, and we also have our configuration folder. What the configuration allows us to do is create our database, set the password, IP address, etc. for our database. We could also have things like a Google service. So we have our various keys stored in there. You could also have language settings. You could have error checking, so whether or not we would like to display errors. So a whole host of things which you would configure on your website, and you could all have it in one file. If Composer is not installed, this code will run and it would actually just exit the application. So it's very important that Composer is run and this autoload file is set. Next, we create a container and we execute our application. So if we go in and look at our app PHP, so in this file, we're creating this app class and we're extending this abstract web application. And from here, I have set these two variables here. So our character set, we always want UTF-8, and also our MIME type to be application.json, because all of the information that I receive back, I want it to be in JSON format. So here is an instance where we're using our config file. So we're using this configuration, we're checking if display errors is set to true. If so, we are displaying all the errors. And we can just have a look at our config file. So here, for instance, you could have JSON object, and within this, you then have your driver, your local host, user password, the actual name of the database that you want to interact with. If it has a prefix, you could have a prefix. So here is the instance where we have our display errors, and we have set that to be true. Next, we have this execution. And in order to run this execution, we are setting everything in a container, and we are also getting this container. In here, we have our routing file. So we are checking all the routes, we are mapping those routes, and based on the route, we are then getting the relevant controller. So I'll go through that route in just a moment. Once we've done our action, we are then returning the content, and we are setting that content in JSON format. So if we now look at our router, once again, we have another JSON object here. And if we go to the base URL, we just want this dashboard controller. If we actually specify dashboard, just as an example, in this case, we also want dashboard controller. We could also specify a task, and again, it's pointing to the dashboard controller. So for these three different instances, I will later show how they actually determine different things on the output. Okay, so we went through the app PHP. It's done our configuration, it's done our router, And from there it said, okay, we need a controller and we need this dashboard controller. So here in the dashboard controller, it is extending our default controller. And in this controller, we have two methods set. So we have just the index, which is our default, and we also have created an edit method. And in this edit method, so in here we have created an edit method. In the edit method, we are just getting a single item, whereas in the index method, we are getting a list of items. Now, for our default controller, how we determine whether we want the index or the edit. So here in our in our default controller, we have this task. So in our URL, if we specify a task, we are checking if the method exists. So if someone went to, in this instance, dashboard edit, then the method exists of edit, so it would return the method edit. Otherwise, it would say it is not found. And if nothing is displayed, it will just get the index. Again, we have our set container, get container. So we are just implementing this container aware interface. Okay, and if we just look at our model, so here we are just looking at some information. So the database that we have implemented is a Joomla database, and we're just getting the ID, the title, and the full text from the content. And in our default model, here we have various options. So we can insert information into a table, we can update the information. There's a validate user class which we could use at a later stage. We could get an item by its ID, we could get an item by its alias, we could list all the items. So there's various ways that we could interact with this API. And for each of these, so it is requesting this build query. So in each one, whether it is get item by ID, get item by alias, or list items, it is always requesting this build query, which is looking at a specific table. And then it is also requesting the build where query, where we may be looking at a specific ID. And basically, once we have all of that information, we then feed that back into our controller. We receive the result and we return that result. Okay, so how that then looks, if we just go to the default, so it says method not found because we have not specified what exactly we would like. If we go to the dashboard, so here it is an items array, and within that it has the objects of each item. So it goes through and lists all the objects. If we then say, okay, we would like to edit. So because we have said edit, but we haven't specified an ID, it's not bringing up anything. If we then specify an ID, it then feeds back to us that ID, the title, and the full text. So once again, we could look at another one. It feeds back the ID, the title, and the full text. So this is just random sample data, which I have set up in the database. Okay, so in the next part, we'll be looking at AngularJS, and that we'll be using for the front end of our website. And then we'll be mashing the two together. So we'll look at the API, get information, feed it back into AngularJS, and output that in HTML. Hope you guys are enjoying the series. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them below, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Enjoy your day.